Welcome into the DNVR Avalanche Podcast. We got AJ, we got Eric, we got Rudo. We're coming to you live on a Thursday with a lot of around the league ground to cover. Look, we are, for most teams, over 10% of the way through the season, which is a number of value of some sort. Statistics start to matter at some point, right? But we'll get to all of that in a bit. Obviously, the big news swirling around hockey as of late is the Ottawa Senators situation. They have had a first-round pick taken away from them for their involvement in the Evgeni Dadonov fiasco and that whole trade situation. It's a kind of a weird situation. We'll get to the actual events in a second, but the league giving them the option to lose their 2024, 2025, or 2026 first-round pick. Their choice. Kind of weird, no?
I mean, it's ridiculous. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason to the punishments
What
they dole out to
gets and what doesn't get punished, yeah.
Because every time something like this happens and people bring up the master list of punishments where it's like, oh, the Ilya Kovalchuk contract, that was a first-round pick. Then the Devils ended up turned into a third-round pick.
Weaseling their way out of, kind of, yeah.
Yeah, which, interesting wrinkle, it went from a first-round pick to a third-round pick.
Yep.
During the Devils being for sale.
Yep. Funny how that works.
Just saying, just an interesting wrinkle here. And
you also have Arizona getting punished pretty heavily for working guys out outside the combine.
Yeah, the additional testing of prospects, which, okay, that was a first-round pick. The first rounder.
And then you have Chicago not getting punished at all for covering up actual crimes.
Yeah, I mean, it was like it was a fine, and you know,
sure. And like there are other punishments where a bunch of dudes got fired there and stuff like that, but the organization itself really didn't get punished that much.
Yeah, and it was allowed to be in the Connor Bedard lottery, which it won.
Which
is why everybody was mad about it.
Yeah, and then on the flip side, you also have things like the Rangers getting fined $250,000 for daring to say that the Department of Player Safety is bad at their jobs.
Yeah, was that after Tom Wilson body slammed Artemi Panarin?
Yeah. The hair pull and everything.
David Quinn, yeah.
Anyway.
We should get him on and ask him about that.
Yeah, that would be interesting, actually. But I'm curious, like, what do you guys think about forgetting the Ottawa thing? But overall, like, does there need to be a more straightforward rule set for things like this? Do picks need to be on the table more often, less often? What does the NHL need to do here?
For me, I think just transparency, please.
Sure.
Like, they released a statement saying, this is what happened. This is the punishment.
Yep.
Done. And when I say this is what happened, they basically just say, because of the incident involving Evgeni Dadonov a couple of years ago, our investigation concluded that they were in the wrong. They are losing a first-round pick of their choosing over the next 3 years. And that's it.
Yep.
Explain to us what happened.
How did we get here?
Why are they being punished? It's easy to just look at it and say, they're the bad guy. Okay. What? Like in society, we have trials in which evidence gets presented. I'm not even saying we need to go that far. They're the judge and jury in this case. So, and I guess the executioner, right? Yep. But like, just some transparency from the league, please. How do you make this decision, and how do you come to this is the punishment?
No.
Relative to other situations? Just some sort of conversation. Just explain to people how you got to this conclusion. A process took place. And if that process was the down goes brown wheel of justice that gets spun,
just say so.
Then just let us know that you guys are actual clowns running the league. I don't think that's the case. I think that it's a bunch of people who care an awful lot sitting into a room, kind of like this one, having arguments back and forth about it, talking through these things, and then coming to a conclusion. Let us in on some of that process. We don't need to, it doesn't need to be on YouTube. It'd be fascinating to watch.
As the video shows.
Yeah. But like, just talk to us. Just how has the NHL not figured out that what people value maybe more than anything else is just transparency? We just want to know how things come to be. Tell us. You know, Jesse always used to say, "I'm a why guy."
Yeah.
Just explain to us what's up. How did you get to this conclusion? Instead of just saying, "Here's our answer. Get over it." Just talk to us.
I on the flip side, I feel bad for the new owner, Andlauer, right? Respected businessman, and goes through the process, which is it's a lengthy, grueling process to acquire a National Hockey League franchise, right? Has to sell parts of his, monies that he's got in the Montreal Canadiens, and right, because you can't own two entities, right? All that stuff, and then felt bad for him, when he's like, hey, listen, we just have a 3-game losing streak, lost 2 or 3 Ds, regular Ds, right? And he's like, and then 2 very weird phone calls from the league, right? One being Shane Pinto, and then obviously
which
the other
we'll talk
one.
about
Yeah, exactly.
that too.
But I'm saying I'm getting back to Dadonov, and he's like, why should I get punished when he sounded sincere. It looked like he did the due diligence, and when you're buying some for $900 million, like there's some due diligence.
You better.
Well, yeah, and he's a smart guy, and I think you could tell in his face that he really had no idea about this thing. And then all of a sudden, first week into it, he gets taken. A first round pick is a very hot thing for a franchise.
Yep.
It's currency. It's a lot
One of the most valuable currencies that a team has.
That's my point. And it's like, so now he's like, why am I being punished for this? And not once that I, again, I'm assuming, what did I hear about this, and well, not that it's his fault, but I'm not saying it's his fault. But then all of a sudden there's a blame somewhere, and then
and look at what his immediate reaction was. He goes right to his GM, basically said, "How the F did this happen? How are you still employed?"
Yeah, and then obviously this, the league, the punishment. Do I think it's severe? I think so. That's me. I just And again, I don't know the whole story. We don't.
I want to ask you about, is this a thing that you could see happening in front offices, having worked for them, or is this just a shit show?
Well, I was just saying earlier, remember, I can see things like that happen, especially at trade deadline, because there's a queue, right? And that's why sometimes, 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock Eastern time.
It's
or whatever,
really 3 hours later.
Whatever it is. And then all of a sudden, 3 hours, there's a queue. And then that's when, and there's a lot of people, because there's, the trade call happening, and there's a lot of people at the league working on it, and all the technicalities, and especially nowadays with the salary cap era and all those things, and things can get slip through the cracks. It does happen. I said it earlier. I was telling you guys it did happen back then to us, and Dean McCammon, and I don't remember exactly what the deal was, which is a little different than that, but it was an honest mistake by the league, by us, by everybody. And then they found a solution to make it work. Now, on this one, they're saying that the punishment is severe because they're saying that Ottawa's wasn't truthful about the whole thing, and that's why they're saying that there's more to it. But again, I don't know what that more
of
to
course,
it is.
When something like this happens, where a player gets traded or is involved in something despite contractual obligations that he can veto that, the NHLPA is going to get involved at that point, and obviously they're going to protect the player.
And the worst timing is this trade deadline. At trade deadline, it's crazy because you're trying to get stuff done, and then there's a clock, and then you're fighting father time, right?
Yeah,
it's just tough, and then it gets really nerve-wracking, and then I can see why the other team involved, like Anaheim or whatever. Oh, we were going to do this, therefore we didn't do part B. You know what I mean? So now all of a sudden this is not good. Then we lost our chance
side
to do
of it,
this side of it. So there's repercussion, right? It's not just the player itself, because you feel bad for the player. You got to go back in the locker room. It's the weirdest feeling in the world, right? Oh, I got traded. No, I didn't. Hey guys, I'm back. It's a tough one. Like it's, I think he took it pretty good. Like, right? If we go back to that season, it was cool, right?
He was one of their best players.
Yeah,
it was great.
No
That's what I
kidding.
mean. Like it was cool to see, but it's a tough one. Like it's a tough one for a coach, for management. You get on the plane and it's like, yeah, they didn't want me yesterday, but now I'm here and no choice they get to have me. So there's a lot of other things, and I think that with other teams being involved, I get why there's a punishment. I just think it's a little much. But again, don't know the whole story. Like you were saying, I don't know what the why is, and it's
Transparency,
it's hard to judge. Is it too severe? Is it not too severe? I don't know. You know what I mean? But I do believe it's severe, right? When it's a first round pick, it's geez. Yeah, that's
Well, and Anaheim is really the big loser more than anything because
Yeah.
Agreed.
they lose out on a second round pick.
Yep.
that's it.
That they thought, and you said, hey, they thought they had this done.
They're gonna
You
get
got a board, right?
They might have had a deal out there somewhere where they would have taken on money
100%.
from somebody else where they could have
100%.
gotten a pick, and they said no.
100%. Yeah, and it's too late.
We like what we've got for
Yep.
this Vegas,
That's
and
right.
then
Now you're in the queue, and it's too late. There's
Yeah.
nothing you can do.
Yeah.
Now you lost your chance, and that's why people are like, "Man, that was wrong," and I get it why it was wrong.
Vegas being as upset as they were, he was in their organization for a season.
Yeah.
I understand that cap friendly isn't the hockey Bible or anything, but you can pretty
But
easily
that
go
info
on.
is readily available to the public.
You can go on to cap friendly, and we know that NHL teams use cap friendly as a resource.
Yep.
Of course.
You can go on there, click on his name, look at his contract details, and see that there are certain protections in there.
As Coach Prime would say, we ain't hard to find.
No doubt, man. And I just feel like Vegas being like, we were misled. Like, this is where transparency would help. Because my question would be from the Vegas perspective of, he was in your organization for how long, and you guys never had this conversation?
Yep.
You know, like, what's just, I guess I would just like to know, how does that happen?
Well,
So just the chain of events and how it came to be, I would like to know. Kind of just a quick breakdown of, again, transparency. I just would like to just tell us what went down here.
And
We don't need a bunch of gory details, but like,
just how did you end up here?
Yeah, exactly. And so the Vegas side of it, it was just like, I would just like some clarity there, because I don't know how a guy is in your organization for a year and you have no idea what his contract is.
Yeah.
That's something to do with the list, right? Because you're supposed to redo your list sometime each year of what teams are not on your,
Yeah,
something
right.
slipped somewhere, obviously. I mean, because we're talking about it.
Yeah.
Something slipped.
But even
You know.
even if you're a front, and I haven't worked in a front office,
Yeah.
obviously, so I guess I'll just ask you this. But
Yeah.
even in like the week leading up to the deadline, if they thought that this was a thing that might happen,
Yeah.
wouldn't they be doing their due diligence to look through their players' contracts and say, hey, these are the things that we have here. Here's
100%.
like there should be some checks and balances going on
Yeah.
here, right? Some level of preparedness. It's not like that was the first conversation that they'd had about Dadonov and moving him.
It slipped and it wasn't done. And sometimes you think it's done. Hey, sometimes it's an honest mistake. It is. Like, it does happen. I'm not saying it's okay. It should happen if you have enough people in your front office, and but if it does, then I think there was not enough honesty, and that's why the punishment came down. And,
Yeah.
and I was listening to talk shows yesterday. People were saying, "Well, who gets the first?" No, nobody gets the first.
It's just gone.
disappears.
Yeah.
It
There's
just
31
disappears.
picks.
I just
Yeah.
want to make that clear for people.
And I like the suggestion in chat here is not giving the Ducks a first, because that wasn't the deal, but give them the second round pick that they should have gotten. Ottawa should give
I don't
them
disagree with that. I
them
don't
the
disagree.
second round the second round pick, instead of just putting it at the end and it's like a compensatory pick.
Yes, like
kind of thing.
exactly. Like when
Don't
you-
even do
you know,
that. Give them Ottawa's second round pick.
Yep.
Nothing different than when a guy walks away on an offer sheet or whatever, right? That
Yeah.
comp, that
There's-
whatever that word, that's a tough word for me in English, but that pick comp and whatever, you finish it, and then it's no different.
Compensation.
Yeah, compensation. And you know what I mean. So
I don't know
it's-
how to say that in French, to be clear.
I have a hard
Sounded
time.
like
My
the Pink
tongue doesn't
Panther.
go. Compensatory. I have a hard time saying that. I mean, I sound really not good, but yeah. So there's a way to do it. Yeah.
The one other thing I wanted to talk about in this situation is, and this is a thing that I think has come up in a lot of sports recently. Certainly you and I watch F1. This comes up all the time. The length of time it came to come to this punishment. You're talking a year and a half
Yeah.
after the actual events go on. And I get you need to have time to do a diligent investigation and figure out what actually happened.
Yeah.
But between then and now, Vegas won a cup. And like, obviously Ottawa has not succeeded in all that many ways, but some of the teams involved in this have gone on to great success, and only now we're getting punishments.
Yeah, well, and in that time, Anaheim doesn't have a second round pick that
Yeah.
they could use in whatever fashion they want. They could draft a player, they could trade it. They could have done whatever they wanted with a second-round pick.
Yep.
And Vegas winning a cup, great. I mean, to me, I'm just like, so.
Sure.
Because Vegas's role in this is mostly just, it's very brief.
I hear you.
They were the team that couldn't make the deal at the deadline because apparently bad information from Ottawa.
Which, without getting too deep into that, my question is more focused. Do these decisions need to be made faster?
Well, I mean,
as far as punishment,
go back to the ownership, Michael Landlau. He all of a sudden he inherits this, right? Because he wasn't there, and it's like doesn't sound like it was talked about. So I think that's, like you said, the process was so long. And again, I don't know why the process was so long. It had to be a reason.
We're never gonna. Yeah,
I'm going by your. That's why I'm waving at you.
This works
somewhere somehow. Then you can piece it together if you understand why. I'm sure there's a why. Like you said, but. It's hard to figure out right now why it took so long when you don't know what the why is.
Yeah, it's weird situation.
Yeah,
I'll leave it at that. Anyway, on that note, we are brought to you all by Soul Savvy. Don't miss out on the biggest sneaker drops and download the Soul Savvy Drops app today. They're awesome for every sneakerhead. You need to be getting in on this app. They keep track of pretty much everything in the sneaker world. Their drop alerts have instant notifications, so you'll never miss a release again. They have raffle management, so when you're trying to get in on super rare releases, they have a whole raffle tracker thing where you can enter for your chance to have the opportunity to buy these shoes. So they're super, super useful for people that are into that scene. Even if you're a casual buyer, they have something great for you. They have a bunch of different versions. They have the basic free version. But if you're really into it, you can also get the Mobile Plus or Premium options coming up on November 4th, which is just a few days away. The Air Jordan 1 Reimagined Royal drops. So if you want to get in on some sick Jordans, make sure you're signed up with Soul Savvy. You can sign up today by clicking the links in the description below or by visiting links.soulsavvy.com/DNVR. Let them know we sent you over there and download the Drops by Soul Savvy app. And then we're also brought to you by Bet365. You can get over there and use the DNVR 365 code to get amazing boosts all over the place. You got to get in on it before it's too late, whether that's betting on the Avs, betting on the Nuggets, even betting on the Broncos. You can get in on much more than that, too. I was watching the league quarterfinals the other night, so you can esports gamble it away as well if you want. Go check it out.
Did.
Oh, yeah? You make a little money on Weibo?
I got home last night and absolutely bet against the North American.
Well, that's where the good money's at in LOL.
Sweated out game one, which was one of the best league games I've seen in a long time.
End up in a pretty easy sweep from there, but
and then it went as expected. A really fun game one though.
Jump in with Bet365, whatever it is you want to bet on. They want it to be never ordinary. Every moment epic, whether it's a simple walk to first base or it's the game-winning goal. It don't matter. Bet365 has it all. You must be 21 or older and physically located in Colorado. Please gamble responsibly. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. Second period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast. Obviously, the big news was this whole Ottawa thing. We'll probably come back to them about the whole Shane Pinto thing in a little bit too. But we wanted to look around the league a little bit and have some conversations about, what's going on in the NHL, how teams have started, how you're feeling out the rest of the league. Do we want to start with the good or the bad, boys?
Bad.
Start with the bad? All right.
Knock it out today. Knock it out.
Biggest disappointment of the season, then?
Jonathan Drouin. No, I'm totally kidding.
Of the whole league, bro?
Whoa.
Totally kidding.
That's a tough look, especially because, for the record, Tufty and Caleb Jones did get reassigned today. So Drouin's probably going to play tomorrow.
Or they call
paper transaction for me.
You think so?
Yes.
Save 2 days on the.
I am.
Save 2 days.
If any of our betting partners would allow us to bet on Saturday's lineup in Vegas,
yep,
I am betting that Tatar comes back in, McDermott goes out, Drouin stays out, and Tufty stays in.
Can't
I
argue
would
that.
also bet a lot of money that Tatar comes back in. I'm on the fence on the Drew and Tufte thing. We'll leave it at that. Outside of the Avs, though, worst or biggest disappointments?
The Battle of Alberta is now like
The battle of the bads.
two kids fighting on a playground instead of a clash of titans.
They both have 2 wins.
Tough starts.
It's
yeah.
like 2 uncoordinated 4-year-olds running into each other.
Slap fight.
Yeah, exactly.
That scene from The Simpsons where they just one of them swinging their arms and the other one's kicking their legs and they just walk at each other.
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely describe the starts to both of their seasons as flailing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing. You know, both those teams I thought would be
Better than
way
this.
better than what they've shown. And it's a 10-game segment, give and take right now, right? So it's not 2 games. So it's getting serious, right?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, Calgary 2-7-1.
That's
getting
again,
bad.
this is a better team than we've talked about that like before, right?
Yep.
The predictions before the season, and that's a better team
One-
than 2-7-1.
The thing is, like, one of their big problems is they were hoping for a rebound from Jacob Markstrom this year, and so far,
You know,
yikes.
yeah, he's been okay. I think their team's been bad.
Yeah.
No,
You know,
I know,
yeah.
I know, but
For me, the biggest thing, look, yes, John, they've got to figure out what's going on with Jonathan Huberdeau.
sure,
He's been not even competitive.
you're paying him far too much for him to be that guy.
You
Yeah.
can't pay $10 million for a guy to drift through games,
Yeah.
whole games. Not like, oh, he took a shift off here, took a shift off
Oh,
there.
even Nas, right?
Drift through games.
Nas got his first goal the other day, right?
Yeah.
You know what I
Yep.
mean? I'm just
He
saying.
had 1
Another-
point through the
another guy.
first 7 games of the season. Like,
What was that? You said what?
1 point
Well, yeah,
in
that's
the
what-
first 7.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, okay. That was a goal, right? That was his first point. Yeah.
No,
so-
yeah,
it's give
I
and
think
take,
it was
yeah,
a
whatever.
second point of the season.
Something
But he
like
was like
that.
a scratch one night too. Like it was
it's
bad.
like,
Yeah, and they've already done the, hey, we're going to call up some of the kids from
Yeah.
the AHL, start to give these guys more time. For me, the big surprise there, more than anything else, is that defense has way too much talent on it for it to be as bad as it's been.
and Ras Anderson, you know, Rasmus being suspended 4 games. 4
Yep.
games, right? He got
Yep.
that hurts. that's their best D in my book. You know what I mean? And wow.
Mackenzie Weegar slander.
I mean,
No, it's
Really,
not.
like,
I mean, I
pick
just
one.
think Ras is so good. You
No,
know?
Noah Hannafin,
yeah.
Mackenzie Weegar, Rasmus Anderson, Chris Tanev, Nikita Zadorov. There's no
That's not a bad
There's
defenseman in
no
sight.
way
Yeah.
in the world
I
a
agree.
defense with that caliber of talent on it.
You're
There
right.
are 25 NHL teams looking around going, Jesus.
Yeah.
One of those guys is on their 3rd pairing? Like, give me a break. That's way too good of a defense for it to be that bad. I'm not going to say that it should be a top 5 defense. That's
Maybe-
probably too much of a stretch for me right now, but
But top 10?
But it's there.
it shouldn't be
That
horrible.
bad.
It shouldn't be going through games.
And you even had Shillington too, right?
Yeah.
Shilly was. I'm just saying that
Yeah.
went back home again this year, but not too sure what's going on there. But obviously missed the entire season last year, and then was
Yeah.
going to make a comeback this year, and then obviously hasn't worked out, and hopefully everything's good on his end. But that's another serviceable NHL D2. You know what I mean? Like whether you
Mhm.
like him or not, he's
Well,
still he's a serviceable 5.
that's a real NHL player.
Yeah, that's it. That's what I'm trying to say. So
Versus you look at there are some defenses we just saw last night, St. Louis.
yeah,
That 75
that's
Tucker
bad.
is awful.
Yeah. Maybe not necessarily a surprising disappointment, but the San Jose Sharks are winless through 9 games.
It's tough to do.
Yeah, it
Gee, if you feel that.
Is their only point that
it is their OT loss to the Avs.
to the
Yes,
Avs, yeah.
that is their only
And they
point.
got crap kicked.
Oh, yeah, they should have gotten run that night.
Oh my god, that was bad.
Mackenzie Blackwood had
Yeah, he
one
was
night
unbelievable.
this year.
man.
Well, and you remember that in that game that they pulled 2 pucks off the goal line,
Yeah.
they hit multiple posts.
Yeah.
Like that should have been a 5-0 game.
Yep. So that's you're talking about dangerous territories of bad. There, you're well on your way to a 48-point season with a start like that.
I think that's the takeaway from the Sharks. We had talked before the season. I think we all had them in the bottom of the division.
Yeah.
But this level of bad,
It's something else.
pretty bad.
The only other real disappointment I have, and you guys can jump in and say anything you want on a team level, Pittsburgh off to a pretty tough start, even with their win over the Avs.
And then they immediately turned around
and
right
laid an
away
egg.
and went
Yeah.
back to being awful.
That's
For a team that is stuck in perpetual buy mode.
Yeah. Well, and a team that committed in the last 18 months, they said, we're not moving on from Crosby, Malkin, Letang. We re-upped these guys for multiple years.
Yep.
We're doing this.
Aren't they the oldest team in the league? I think on paper they are, right? Yeah,
I believe they are.
I think so.
Do you think that like matters at all that like that was under old GM though? Like Dubas is gonna have to like take that and figure out what to do next with it.
It kind of does, but then Dubas comes in and the first thing he
makes
does
the
is
huge
Erik Karlsson.
splash, and like
So
to
he
no
just-
one's surprise, it doesn't really work.
It's like and it's just like this isn't what you needed. You know, the Jari contract was that really the play there?
Yeah.
So I just think that's especially I've talked about this before with the Kings and all this other the Devils and the Sabres. There's more teams that are willing to go cheap at goaltender, and they tied themselves to Tristan Jari. And I think you look at the not just the Pens, but also the Caps look awful.
Oof.
They look completely
Done. Yeah.
They look completely washed.
They look so bad.
That
Nick
core.
Backstrom said, I think I'm just going to retire.
Yeah, Nick Backstrom was like, "This is not where I'm in pain. I'm not very good anymore. Why am I doing this?" And again, another team tied themselves to a goaltender. This is now a year in Darcy Kemper.
Yeah.
And there was a reason that the Avs
Let
loved
that
Kemper.
go. Yeah.
But the Avs were the phrase that I was told was not a chance when it came to the Avs entertaining
That's
Any-
money.
At that price point.
any kind of a lengthy deal with Darcy Kemper.
Yeah.
I think the most that they would have considered would have been 2 or 3 years. And so
Okay.
for the Avs, it was a total non-starter. They weren't even interested.
Understandable.
Versus they were very interested in trying to do something with Kadri if they could, and two teams. My point is two teams that have tied themselves to goaltenders where you're like,
They're struggling.
was that a sound investment?
Yeah, I mean, you go back even further and look at Grubauer in Seattle, and I'm sure the list goes on and on and on for teams that have made that mistake. But it's, anything can happen through a 10-game stretch. These teams could still turn it around, except for San Jose. Don't think they're figuring it out. But it's still a little too early to be like, no, this team is actually terrible. There's no hope.
Yeah, I mean the bad teams have been bad. The other like bad starts that I think have surprised me, Minnesota being as bad as they've been. There have been some injuries.
Pretty mediocre, yeah.
Losing Jared Spurgeon on defense is a really big thing for them because that team is built for Kirill Kaprizov to make magic happen
And
them
then to
overperform
shut it
just
down.
enough offensively and to be fantastic defensively in front of a fine goaltender in Philip Gustafsson. And that has not happened for them yet. That defense has not come online and done what it needs to do. Jared Spurgeon's a really big loss for them. That's a slow start for, and the Central Division isn't very good, so they won't lose a ton of ground. But you're looking at the top of the Central and saying
Colorado and Dallas are already running away a bit
2
here.
more weeks of this, and Colorado and Dallas might be out of realistic contact for every other team in the division that is not Winnipeg.
Yep.
To me, it gets late real early if you have a slow start.
I want to ask you this because have you played on teams that have started slow in the NHL, and at what point does that panic start to set in?
I've never been on a team.
I mean,
that's
not Sharks
slow,
level,
you know what
but
I mean? Like, that is slow. Do I remember like the bad Quebec Nordique days? Absolutely growing up because my dad had a lot of clients for the Nordiques, and it's depressing. It's tough because you're out of it. I've played in LA where we've had,
middle starts. Yeah.
Oh no, decent start, but
Yeah.
then by Christmas you're
It's
like,
fading,
wow, this is
yeah.
going the other way, and then you're like, it's so hard to go to the rink.
Yeah.
You're a professional, you can get paid a lot of money, but you get there and you're like, wow, what's the point? You know what I mean? Like, and I know what the point is. I get that. But you know what I mean? I think you can't help yourself but to think that, what are we doing here today? Like, oh my God, this is so bad. And then you go in the game and you have no chance. And then it just goes sideways a little bit. And here we go again. That's why, like, down the stretch, when you play those teams that have nothing to lose, you want to make sure you jump on top of them right away.
Quick, yeah.
Or else, it becomes a pond hockey game. They like as if nothing to lose. You know what I mean? And some guys have made a career out of this where they have a great last 20 games of seasons and games that mean nothing. And then they build their pedigree that way. And then next thing you know, like, they get signed and people are like, wow, he's not that good. Well, no way. He played in games that didn't mean anything.
Yep.
And you hear teams all the time, you want to be playing in meaningful games going down the stretch. And of course, it doesn't sound like the Sharks is going to happen.
No, I don't think so.
But it's tough. Yeah. To answer your question, it's tough. Like, it's human nature. It's just, you play to win. Like, why do you play?
Yeah.
You play to win the Stanley Cup, and then by October, you have no chance of winning it. You know what I mean? You're like, oh God, this is a long year.
November 2nd. November 2nd. And
you're out of it.
There are 5 teams in the NHL right now that are like, we didn't have high expectations going in, but we're done.
That's why I say you want to be playing meaningful games. And I hate that term, but it is the right term for it. You know, there's no other way around it.
That's just a crazy number to look at.
I mean, you look at, like, I don't know when they play each other, but you look at San Jose Chicago game in February or something.
2 teams that are just not going to care.
Those are
all.
2 teams. Yeah. The only people watching that game are the people paid to do it. You know, it's going to be that watching that game is going to be CHGO and Shangpeng.
Yeah.
Friend of the show.
Friend of the show,
it's going to be
Champagne.
tough.
Those are the only ones that are going to pay attention to that game, you know, because those bad teams always amp themselves
Connor
up
Bedard's parents might be watching.
To be, at that point, they might be, we can't do it anymore, Connor, sorry. But but
in the middle of February,
those teams like to play spoiler at the end, where every win for them is like
a fun little thing.
It's easy to get up and be like, we're trying to ruin their season. You look at Chicago did that last year with Pittsburgh.
Yep.
I think it was Chicago and Montreal that beat the Pens down the stretch and keep them from making the playoffs.
To your point, 1996. Look on Safari, whatever you want to look at. Whatever.
Safari.
Whatever. You know, look on the internet. I'm old,
Apple
man.
guy. Imagine being an Apple guy.
I can't even imagine anybody not saying just like Google something. That was
Google,
so funny.
Look at 1996. I'm old, man. You know
say
that.
Netscape it next.
Look at 1996.
Yeah, let me ask Jeeves real quick.
Let me go to the library and ask them.
God, stop making me feel old.
Should I bust out my Encarta CD?
Oh man, I love my Encarta CD.
So
VHS tapes and stuff. Come on. If I showed my kids that, they'd be like, what is that? You know, what do they look at this thing? They're like, whoa. Anyway, 1996, last game of the season, Avalanche before they go on the playoff run.
Yep.
They lose to the LA Kings game 82, 3-2. I'm on the LA Kings at that time. That's all we talked about. Training camp. We beat the Stanley Cup playoffs game 82 last year. That's all we talked about. Like, that was our motivation thing. You know what I mean? Like, and that's what you're saying about you're trying to play spoiler. You're trying to, build yourself up on something that's really not there. Again, we didn't make the playoffs. I'm just saying, but the motivation factor didn't work. But that's all we talked about. We beat those guys 3-2, and they were going in the playoffs. They won the cup, so we must be not that bad.
Well, you remember game 82 of last year for the Avalanche, Nashville had nothing to play for.
Yep.
But they wanted to keep the Avs from winning the division.
And it ended up being a close game,
Yeah, well, the Avs came out like gangbusters. It got interesting, and the Avs ended up finally pulling out, McKinnon scores
Nathan McKinnon put him down,
with like 4 minutes to go in the third period or something, and it was all good from there. But that's those teams. That's what they care about. But it takes them until March and April when everybody's talking about playoffs. You're in January or February. You're not talking about playing spoiler. You're just talking about being miserable.
The bad teams being like, I got to go to the rink again today.
Yeah. Well, you look at Calgary and Edmonton. That's a pretty cold place to be if you're going to be miserable every day going to the rink. You're going to be freezing your ass off.
I think Huberdeau's a great example that you were talking about earlier. You think that dude wants to show up to the rink right now?
And it's a weird feeling because you get in that dressing room. You get in that dressing room. I was telling you guys the other day about the the equipment guys are coming out with the
Yeah,
lines, right? And then you're just sitting there, and everyone is just, if it's going bad, you're just sitting there, and everyone, there's no joy, there's no happiness, everybody sits there, they're all waiting for their jerseys, and they're all nervous. Oh my God, I might be a scratch now, and then they're miserable because they changed the lines, and I don't want to play with Rudo, or I want to play.
I
with
wouldn't want to
AJ.
play with me either.
I mean, like, it gets bad. It gets a sour taste in your mouth. You just sit there and you're like, man, when is this going to end? You know what I mean? It's a nightmare season, and it's not fun.
That's why they say winning cures all.
It does. The Gatorade tastes better. It does.
There are teams,
BioSteel. Yeah, different. I'm old.
There are teams that you can see hate playing together, but they have success.
Yeah.
And that's a tie that binds.
Yeah.
All right, we got to switch gears here to the surprises on the good side of
Anaheim,
the NHL.
Greg Cronin.
Awesome.
Yeah, they won 4 in a row.
5.
Is it 5 now?
Yeah.
There you go. Also, Greg Cronin got kicked out of one of those, but get him, Crow.
We were sad when Crow left because we saw the difference that he had made at the AHL level and how competitive the Eagles were, and all of the veteran guys, the buy-in down there. And obviously it's really early for Sneaks down there,
But it's been a tough start.
it's a tough start. For my money, it's more of a goal scoring problem than anything else, because we've seen them double up teams on shots and lose games a couple times.
Yep.
And that's not great. You'd like a little better out of Eustace. But really, Crow's done such a great job in Anaheim.
Well,
That team looks bought in and
Yeah.
hard. They're right now, they're a hard out. They're playing with a lot of confidence, and there's enough talent there. Troy Terry and Trevor Zegras, Ryan Strome, and Frank Vetrano are playing fantastic right now. Those guys have been great. The buy-in, I think, is really impressive.
Highlands Ranch Troy Terry yesterday hat trick, right? So, right, good kid. But here, I'm going to give credit to Verbeek. Again, small sample. We all know that. Again, it's not 2 games, but it's a 10-game segment, give and take, right? I'll give credit to Verbeek, even though he's the next Red Wing. That's fine. I'll give it to him. For doing his due diligence, right? I don't know what his history is with Greg Cronin, if any. He might not, but I know he interviewed a lot of candidates.
The process took time.
It took time. I think it was lengthy. It was detail oriented. It was and I would, if you would have told me last year, like, oh, Greg Cronin's going to Anaheim, like, yeah, no, I would have said to him, no, I don't think so. Crow's a older gentleman, meaning like, he's not the up and comer, and he's not like 40 years old. He's in his 60s. Even though he looks great, and he looks great, looks amazing. Loves the game, right? Just by talking to he loves the game, and he's been around. He's seen it all, and I thought it was a great choice, by Pat Verbeek and the Anaheim Ducks. And again, short sample, but good for him. Hopefully for those guys, they can keep it up, except when they play the Avs, obviously. But I think it's nice to see stories like that. You're right. I do think it's. Hey, we all picked them to finish not very good, right? We all picked them. Maybe, hopefully, we're wrong, right? Because good things happen to good people, and hopefully they can keep it up.
What do you guys think of the Leo Carlson limits being put on right now?
Yeah, I don't know.
So Leo Carlson's not he's not going to play all the time. For anybody that doesn't know, they're going to have him on kind of a load management schedule where he's going to have planned scratches.
Yeah,
it's dumb. You're either ready for the NHL or you're not.
I mean, there's so many ways to look, but I don't disagree with that way of looking at it. I don't disagree with the way they're looking at it. I don't know. I don't know the kid. I don't know, the circumstances, and maybe everybody's different. But yeah, if I'm a player, I want to play. Like I want to play in the NHL, then, or send me back to wherever I'm supposed to be.
And don't get me wrong. I think if you're developing a prospect, there are situations where scratching him can be a good thing. Getting him in the NHL can be a good thing. But when you're talking about a high-end pick who's 18 years old, you see so many teams try and do this thing. Seattle tried to do it with Shane Wright. You go back over time and you see a ton of this where it's like, stop screwing around with it and just make a decision about the kid. Either play him or put him somewhere where he's going to play. He's 18. He needs to play hockey and get better at playing hockey.
I listen, over my time in this league as a player, or even working with teams, like, we have made mistakes on guys. I can't even think of a name right now. Like, but playing wise, like, I've seen guys like Manny Malhotra. You guys remember Manny? Like, no, obviously coaching in the NHL now, but back then was a first rounder in New York and wasn't ready to be there. And he was there. And Manny will be the first one to tell you he wasn't ready for that. He wasn't ready to be a full-time NHLer, and you're 18 years old, and it's a lot. It's overwhelming.
It's okay if you're not
That's
ready.
what I'm saying.
Like,
And I think it slowed down. He was rescued a little bit after a while because then he figured out, okay, he was a top 6 pick, I think, or a top 5 pick. And, he just wasn't that type of talent. Ended up playing an awesome career in the NHL because he figured out, like I always say, what he is. But he could easily, because he was so strong mentally and such a good value and good kids, like good values, upbringing value. So he kind of found a way. But guys like that get lost, and I'll give you another guy. And he's, again, I hate saying that about the Minnesota Wild, but Eriksson Ek was a guy that I thought was way too early in the league. And after 2-3 years, I'm like, wow, they're going to lose this guy. Like they did so many times back then, the Wild over the years. Like, again, I'm having a blank right now on guys, but there's a lot of guys that they put in the NHL too early. And then they weren't ready. And 3-4 years later, they were gone. You know what I mean? Where I'm like, oh my God, they're going to do the same thing with Eriksson Ek. And I like them and, prove to be right. But it doesn't always work out. Sometimes you got to be careful because you can lose guys.
I wonder if that experience is
maybe
informed some of their approach with Marco Rossi and keeping it
very slow.
There have been health considerations with Rossi, obviously, but like they've been slower to integrate him into a meaningful role at the NHL level than I expected.
And if you're honest with the player, go back to the heyday of Detroit, the heyday of, like, remember Nashville? The road to Nashville starts in Milwaukee. Every guy, every prospect from Shea Weber, they all played in the American League. And that was their philosophy. I don't mind that. I don't like it when you have no philosophy. I like it when you have a philosophy. Whether it's, you think it's right or I think it's wrong, whatever it is. At least they have a philosophy. And, I think you do and try to do what's best for you and the kid, because they're kids at that time. They're 18. They're teenagers. God.
Another maybe slight surprise, Detroit Red Wings off to a 6-3-1 start. I don't think that's anything crazy, but it's also a team that, look, when you're a bubble team and you have a start like that, that can be the type of thing that maybe you squeak into the playoffs because you had a good start. And I know we've talked before about how their numbers right now are pretty not sustainable, but
this is true of you're describing two teams at the same time in Detroit and Vancouver.
Yeah. Who are
teams
both
that are off to good starts and
riding the highs right now for sure.
Driven by insane percentages going their way.
Yep.
I've been on teams like, working for teams and as a player where by game 30, 35, we're in first place in the division. And by game 82, we're dead last. You know what I mean? So there's a fine line in the NHL. It turns quick. You know what I mean? So when you do have a 2-3 losses in a row, whatever, you want to nip that. And if you can't, if you're young, look at some of those Avs days back then. We were right there at Christmas, January, like you're top, and then all of a sudden you have that little losing streak that hits you, and you're not mature enough as a team to hold, like, to deal with it as a team, as individuals, and next thing you know, whoop, it goes down, and it goes down quick. You have 2 bad weeks in the NHL. It's a tough way to recover.
Yeah.
It's a deadly league.
It goes fast.
Yeah.
For sure.
Fun starts for them, but
yeah. And that might be all it ends up being. You don't know. But
you don't know.
We can't see the future, unfortunately. But if you've had a tough start, if you need to recover from a car accident, call Bacchus and Shanker. 222-2222 today. You can also go to coloradolaw.net. They'll give you a free consultation. If you've been injured in any way and it's not your fault, like I said, car accident, or if it was at work, or, if you got hit downtown or whatever it might be, Bacchus and Shanker has your back. You can get that free consultation, and if they think you have a case, you pay them nothing up front. They don't get paid until you get paid at Bacchus and Shanker, and they'll get you paid because they've won over $1 billion for their clients over the more than 25 years that they've been doing this. So give them a call today at the 2 number or go to coloradolaw.net. Get Bacchus and Shanker on your side because Bacchus and Shanker wins. And then, maybe you want to do some law learning of your own. You can go to MSU Denver to either start or restart your college career. It's a fantastic campus downtown. If that's your thing, you can go to classes there. You can also do online classes. They have over 90 different majors to choose from, and even have some options that include choosing your own path through to a major. So go check them out, mbsudenver.edu. They're accepting signups for the spring semester right now. You can get in there and start or restart your college career and get the most out of it. Third period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast. Some more around the news, around the league news stuff. Is it just me, or do you guys feel like there've kind of been a flurry of suspensions here recently? Charlie McAvoy.
2 big ones in a row.
Yeah.
Rasmus Anderson and Charlie McAvoy
Yeah.
with 4 games each. Both well earned.
Oh,
for
totally
my money,
deserved.
man.
The McAvoy one was eerily similar to the Kadri hit.
Yeah. And that was the difference between Kadri and Charlie McAvoy.
Yeah.
Because if Kadri pulled that shit,
He's
it'd be
getting like 15 games.
like, yeah.
Yeah. Agreed. But you have those two, and then you have this Shane Pinto situation.
Transparency.
Suspended 41 games for some level of gambling, providing insider information. It doesn't seem like it was on his own games, or maybe it wasn't even hockey at all. I don't know. It's super unclear to me, but
The league's I think the outward frustration with the like string of gambling related suspensions over the last 24 months.
sure.
The NFL has had a number of them.
Yep.
Now the NHL has a big one too with Shane Pinto. I think the frustration is that we can't go 6 minutes without somebody advertising gambling to us,
We did it on this show.
including on our show, obviously. And the rules just seem so arcane.
Yep.
About players and their limitation. Like, players shouldn't gamble on their own sports. Just full stop. But this, like, you can't sports gamble in the building.
Yeah.
You know, or whatever happened. with Shane
Random
Pinto.
rules. Yeah.
Whatever happened with Shane, but that's my point.
Transparency.
Listen, the guys are educated. They are on the subject. There are like Zoom calls from, there's
Sure.
a PA rep on each team, and they go over all that stuff. A lot of times you'll go on the road and it's like, hey, oh yeah, tonight we can't go out to dinner because we're eating at the hotel because the PA's coming to give us a lecture on gambling or whatever. So everyone knows what's legal and what's not legal. Of course, I don't believe he bet on NHL games, and I think it had something to do with something outside of the NHL. And again, we don't know, but obviously bad enough where 41 games is and I know he's unsigned and everything, but it's still 41 games. That's a severe punishment. So you did something wrong, right? Somewhere.
I think there's a little bit of like a
really wrong
fear mongering thing of like, obviously betting on your own games is a huge, heinous thing. Like now you're talking about throwing games potentially.
Yeah.
There's an ocean between that and a dude betting on,
which I don't think
whatever.
it was that.
Right.
Sound like
I'm
it
not
was
saying
that.
I'm not saying this
yeah,
is what's
exactly.
going
Yeah,
on with
yeah.
Pinto, but I think it's hard for people to decipher the difference between
Yeah.
straight up throwing games and gambling on an NFL game or whatever.
Yeah.
And
it's hard to know what the lines are when they don't tell you.
Yep, exactly. And part of the problem here for me is, again, I don't know what Pinto did. I don't know how bad it actually is.
Me neither.
But
You neither. Again.
you see Charlie McAvoy take a dude's head off, and he gets 4 games.
Right.
And Shane Pinto gets 41 games for something that potentially has nothing to do with hockey at all.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to...
There's a really big gap
Yeah.
of 37
Right.
games between those infractions where one guy is giving another guy a potential brain injury
Right.
that alters the course of his life.
And
Shane Pinto
trying
is
to make a
involved
little
in
money gambling. Yeah.
some level of gambling, doing something.
Yeah. It's a tough look to...
It is, because it's like there's always that argument of, well, if you suspend a guy for longer than 4 games, it has to go through a mediator because of the agreement with the NHLPA.
Right.
Blah, 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 blah. But you're talking about things that seriously hurt guys.
Yep.
Get a handful. We talk about 4 games and we're like, oh, that's a big suspension.
Yep.
Yeah, it's 4 games. Shane Pinto, even if Shane Pinto signed tomorrow, 41 games in half the season.
Yeah.
And it sounded like that got negotiated down to get to 41.
Right.
So what was it before? Was it at 82? Was it 60? Like,
we don't know.
Where did it start? But it ended up at 41. And it's easier, I think, to drop the hammer on a guy like that and say, if it's Connor McDavid, are they giving him 41 games?
No shot.
Color me skeptical.
Unless it's literally like he's throwing games and betting on it.
It was an easy example to me. It felt like it was an easy example to be made of a guy that's 41 games is a big number to put in a press release, but a guy who's not signed.
Yeah.
And is not a star player for the Sens, an up and coming good one, but not a star player for the Sens. It felt like a convenient, we're going to make an example of the situation. We're going to let everybody know how serious we are about gambling.
Yeah.
And then the advertisement might as well be brought to you by a variety of the gambling partners that advertise during every game.
Yep.
And on every sports podcast.
Yep.
And that's where the disconnect, it was very obvious the day that it happened.
Yeah. P.S. Gambling sites, hold the NHL responsible. We need injury reports.
Yeah, not upper body, lower body, Jared Bednar winking and smirking at the media about, I don't know. Well, I consider him day to day because I could walk in tomorrow and magically he could be healthy, even though they've told me it's going to be 4.5 weeks,
No, give us the details.
Yeah, come on, guys. Just a little something. I've always said I don't need to know the exact injury. Just tell me an accurate timeline.
Yep.
Tell me an honest expectation of timeline. If you say day to day, it needs to be literally.
If that dude's out 2 weeks, we got a problem.
Yeah. If it's we're waiting on him to come back from a concussion, it's indefinitely.
And that's fine. Yeah.
I'm gonna be neutral here. I can see both sides, so I get it.
Fence sitter Eric over here.
You know what I mean? Like I don't like to sit on the fence, but on this one I am on the. I get it, but I also I understand the other side too. Like you're trading for a D, and then so they I don't know. Like there's a big difference. They know you're desperate because Rudo's our number one D and he's out 6 weeks, but everybody thinks he's out for 3 days. You know what I mean? So you don't sound so desperate on a trade. And listen, I get both sides. Yes, it'd be nice to know why, and again, transparency. But I get on the other side.
Spoken like someone who's had a trade fall through because.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Like I understand, but I don't like to sit on the fence. This one I am on. I get it. I get both sides.
Yeah, the media side I think is pretty universal in wanting that.
Oh, it is. That's why, and I agree
the media
with
side
it.
wants information.
100%.
We are information merchants. It is
but even
what
in
we get
playoffs,
paid for.
and you're gonna tell me like even in playoffs, like listen, I don't know. We're playing T-Max and they have great Ds, and that D's got a bad shoulder because it's known that it's a shoulder. Again, I'm not for violence, but you're gonna go and finish your checks because he's got a bad wing, and you want what I mean. So I get how you're trying to protect your players too. That's what I'm saying. On the flip side, I get it.
Again, I'm not asking. For me, more important
your
is
timeline.
the timeline.
I know. I understood what you said. Yeah, I know.
Because if it's like I can understand the argument of
you're
a
right.
guy's a separated shoulder, you call it upper body because it is more information.
Or it's his finger. Well, okay. Well, guess what? Like
it's like how long is he gonna miss? That's for me.
I know.
That's what I care about. That's the impact.
I know.
Here.
I don't disagree with that. Yeah.
More than like, he has a high ankle sprain, or
I don't disagree.
He's got a sprained knee or something. Okay.
I don't disagree with that.
Some fun player level stats.
Frank Vatrano, baby. My favorite Frank Vatrano fun fact is he's the guy who split the Rookie of the Year award in the AHL with Mikko Rantanen.
Yeah. What a different time that was.
Yeah, that the Avs had a prospect
in the AHL succeeding.
Just dominate the AHL to that point.
Hughes brothers leading the point totals for both forwards and defensemen. Technically, Makar and Fox have caught Quinn now, but Jack Hughes starting off ridiculously well. Best goaltender in the league, technically Jonathan Quick.
Yeah.
Only 3 starts, but
small samples, baby.
Yeah, 0.41 goals against.
Good for him, man.
We talked about this last night. Funniest possible outcome imaginable.
Ends up back in LA.
The Kings can't solve it with Copley and Cam Talbot, so they trade for Jonathan Quick. Is that the funniest outcome imaginable here?
Definitely.
Cool.
We already talked about the Brincat. You mentioned Vetrano on the goal scoring side.
At least the Brincat's like you expect him to score 30.
For sure. And beyond that, you have guys like Pasternak, Reinhart. No one blowing you away.
I tell you, Reinhart, just on a personal level, frustrates me.
I understand that.
He was on my fantasy team last year, and I waited 60 games for that guy's game to turn into shape, and I finally traded him.
And immediately.
And he's been awesome ever since. And I'm like, God damn it.
Some of the rookie races. Logan Cooley, 1 point ahead of Connor Bedard right now.
Yeah. Boy. We talked about this off air.
Yeah.
If Connor Bedard could even play with what Logan Cooley gets to play with every day.
Be a big step up.
Instead of this cavalcade of quad A players. Yeah.
Chicago's bad,
They're
fam.
awful, dude.
They're bad. Don't know what else to tell you.
So with Chicago, I don't know how much any of us have watched of them. For me, it's been a handful.
More than I would have liked to.
No kidding. But Korchinski, Vlasic, are they headed in the right direction? Do we still feel good about where they're going? On defense. At forward, I don't have any problems.
I think so. It takes time, especially on D. It takes a few more years than I thought.
Yeah,
it does.
I think it's
your reps and your everything.
I don't think they're headed the wrong direction, but you just, especially with a guy like Korchinski, the outcomes there are so variable with a player like that.
So let me extrapolate this into a bigger question. If you're running the Blackhawks and you're planning on having another top 5 pick this year, are you hoping for Celebrini or Yzerman to go with Connor Bedard? Or are you not so upset if you end up in a really good defenseman class, if you end up picking 4th or 5th, and
you get the Bowen Byram of the class
maybe
or whatever.
You're picking between an Ivan Demidov or any of the number of high-end defensemen instead, where you're saying, hey, there's a really good Russian forward in Demidov, but there's a bunch of really good defensemen also that are going to make up the top 10, top 15, really.
I mean, that roster is so thin, I think you're happy either way, to be honest with you.
Even though... because we talked about when you get Bedard, it really puts your rebuild into a different speed.
Yep.
And if you go and if they were to get if they get the first pick, they're taking a Celebrini or whoever it's going to be.
You have to.
Exactly. Because you're not going to pass up a McDavid, Draisaitl, McKinnon, Rantanen caliber of situation.
Yeah.
But would it be almost a blessing in disguise, like Colorado dropping to 4, where it was like,
I'm just gonna say that.
We don't necessarily need this forward at the top.
But we'll take Kale McCarr.
I sure would have liked to have had Nico Hischier be the 2C behind Nathan McKinnon, but
I think you take where the chips fall out, right? You know what I mean? And you make the best of it. And I think, like Rudo just said, they're gonna end up with a good player. I mean, assuming that, the trend, the 82 games, they go that way.
Yeah.
At the deadline, they're going to trade Nicky Foligno or,
I don't know that they can move Perry
well,
and Foligno
I'm just saying,
with those contracts.
well, I don't know.
Yeah,
You can
they're
hold money, right?
gross.
If you can hold money, right? You guys, we all know.
And
it takes salary,
I'm sure they will fire sales to the best of their
exactly.
ability.
So they'll probably drop to the,
but
top 5. And
the part where I see where AJ's coming from here is we've talked about it a lot over the years. It's harder to find defensemen in the NHL. The trade costs you get them at a premium. The top level defensemen are almost never on the market because once a team has one, they pay him whatever it takes to keep him forever.
Darlene.
Yeah, Power, Darlene.
No, whatever.
I look at the ads with McCarr and Taves. Like, you lock those dudes down. So I can see how, from that perspective, longer term, maybe that top end D makes more sense because it's something they can lock up and you can find forwards easier in free agency and things like that. But as was already said, it's hard to be upset if you end up with a top 2 pick,
Yeah, if you end up putting Celebrini and Bedard on a team together.
Yep.
You're built for the future.
That's
now you don't give a shit if Oliver Moore is the 2 or 3C.
Right. Doesn't matter now. All right. That's all I had. Any other topics around the league you guys wanted to touch on today?
You mentioned rookies.
Yeah.
guy that I think is not getting enough love for a number of reasons, but the Minchikov kid in Anaheim. Holy shit, does he look good?
Mm-hmm.
Jackson Lacombe looks pretty good at times. You know, we saw him in the rookie tournament where it was like, this guy doesn't belong here. But it's been really, for me, when I've watched Anaheim, it's been up and down for him. But the Minchikov kid, holy lordy, does he look like the real deal now.
Was he there in Michigan at the rookie too?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I remember because I was looking on the back end, right? All those guys.
Yeah.
And the French guy, and they all ended up like doing pretty good, right?
Really intense moms.
Yeah. They were awesome. One more thing, I got a fun fact that I saw yesterday.
Oh.
And again, I'm sure some people saw it, but I had no idea. And I consider myself like a hockey historian. I'm old school.
Here we go.
Boston Bruins yesterday. On this date, 1924, Charles Adam was awarded Boston's NHL's entry for $15,000. Now they're selling franchises for $1 billion. $15,000. How crazy is that? And he said he named them that's pretty crazy, huh? And then he named them Bruins for its ferocity and toughness. And chose brown and gold as a club's primary colors to match his grocery stores. I was like, no way. I had no idea. You know what I mean? Like, I thought it was so cool. I always go back to food.
I tell you what.
I always go back to food. The Bruins the colors are because of food, a grocery store. See?
Branding is a hell of a drug.
How crazy is that? I had no idea. Never read that before. I thought it was cool.
It is really cool.
Yeah.
I didn't know any of that.
And the ads, were still Stanley Cup odds favorite. Yesterday. November.
They will continue to be.
2nd.
Yeah, it's funny how the people who get most upset about a 2-game slide are the people who follow the team the closest.
No.
And it's like, let's reel this.
But
zoom that camera out a little bit.
It gets you in the gut. You telling me you felt good about that team after those 2 games? You're like, oh my god, like
of
what
course
wrong? It's hard because it's so bad those 2 games. And then you hear coach saying, "Oh, it wasn't that bad."
Yeah.
It's like, oh god, it was bad. You know what I mean? Like in my mind. And then it's, but it's hard, and that's why I love it. That's why sports is so fun. On top of the world, the next day you're like, this stinks. You know what I mean? Like so.
Reinforces why last night was a pretty important early season game, because that's a bad Blues team.
Yep. Get you back on the tracks a little bit.
Yeah, but it gets you back on the tracks. But if you go into Vegas and you lose in Vegas, which is a realistic possibility, that's
totally
a really good Vegas team.
Yep.
You lose to Vegas, you've lost 3 of 4 games. Yeah. That's still better than 4 of 4.
Yeah.
It's better to be 7-2 than 6-3 going into the showdown in Vegas where you've lost 3 straight. Now you're starting to feel like
if you come out
6-0 start is a great. That's as good as you can do out the gate.
And you erase the blood of it real quick if you're 6-4 all of a sudden.
Exactly. Yeah. But now winning last night, they win Saturday in Vegas, and
you're 8-2.
If you're 8-2, because we have talked about 8-2.
Go 800.
First, every 10 games, if they can shoot for 8-2 realistically, and they can either accomplish it or get close to it, they're going to win the Central Division.
Yep.
Probably comfortably.
Probably win the West.
And exactly. And it's, you want to take points off Vegas. They haven't lost in regulation yet. The Avs are like,
they're hungry. Yeah.
We won't be the first one to do that.
Had to do it
in their barn. Somebody's going to beat them eventually. It might as well be the Avs.
There you go.
I'm excited to see it, man. It's also why I don't think Joe Drouin gets back into that game, into that lineup. I don't know. They're going to throw him to those wolves.
We'll see. We'll see how it goes. We are brought to you by Breckenridge Brewery, the official beer of DNVR. You can get yours at your local liquor store. Use the Breck Beer Locator online at breckbrew.com, or, of course, come down to the bar. Find 8 different kinds on tap here. And if you're local, you got to hit up Snarf's to get your sandwiches. Delicious sandwiches from those guys. There you go. You heard it here first. The OGs down at DU, they've got a couple different locations now. Their bread, amazing. Their sandwiches, amazing. You literally can't go wrong with these guys. Everything. They can put anything on a sandwich. I'd be like, yeah, all right, I'll eat it. And you guys know me. I do not eat a lot of foods. I am pretty picky when it comes to things. So Snarf's is good.
This, but anybody who sat there and watch along has watched him drink ranch out of the cup as he eats chicken bones.
Because ranch is one of the things that I like. Either way, Get your Snarfs today. You can download the Snarfs Customer Appreciation app and get a BOGO 7-inch sub when you do. We also have one super chat from Melanie, who is always here, says, have a great day. Loving the interviews with the players. Thanks for all you do. We appreciate you, Melanie. That's all we got for today. We're going to get out of here. We are having a question and answer show, mailbag show tomorrow. Tweet should go up sometime tonight. So get your questions in then. We'll probably repost it in the morning and get your questions in then too. But if you have anything you want to ask us, hockey related or otherwise, keep an eye out for that and send in your questions. We appreciate all you, and we will talk to you tomorrow.
We all silly like the mayor.